They're here, they're going to destroy us.
Do not adjust your screen. If this video has found you, you're one of the chosen. Be warned, these are all true accounts of the weird, macabre, and eerie. Welcome to the transmission. Welcome to Eerie Files. Do you believe? Bigfoot Trail.
I've loved to hike and camp as far back as I can remember. But what gave me the biggest thrill was going off the beaten path and finding my own trails. It felt like I was finding my own space of paradise. So you can imagine how stoked I was when I got to college and met a girl who shared the same passion for it I did. I never thought something I loved so fondly would turn into a nightmare so quickly. This is my story. Every other weekend, Wendy and I would venture out to get lost in nature, trying to find more and more remote spots. One Friday afternoon, after hiking for a few hours, we came across this picturesque location close to a crystal clear lake. The only odd thing was, there were a few interestingly large piles of twig structures nearby. I really didn't put too much thought into it at the time. I wish I would have. We set everything up and took a dip in the lake to cool off after the long hike. The water was perfect, and the sunset cascading on the water was gorgeous. But after a while, it started to feel like someone, or something, was watching us beyond the trees. It's easy to be a bit paranoid when you camp in secluded areas. You always had to respect the fact that this wasn't your home. These woods belonged to a long list of wild animals, some of which were extremely dangerous. We got out of the lake and lit a careful fire to help dry off and stay warm. We decided it was best to try and get some sleep because we wanted to get up early the next day and hike some more. In the middle of the night, this smell woke us up. It was putrid, like wet, rotting garbage that wafted over the campsite. I reached out to unzip the tent when the footsteps began. I jumped back. Something large was outside our tent. The footsteps were massive sounding. You could feel the ground shake with each step. I grabbed Wendy and held onto her. I cupped her mouth and motioned her to keep quiet. There was no way this was a bear, but at that moment, I couldn't believe I wished it was. The walking suddenly stopped. Maybe something was just passing by. And then, a wild grunt. It was guttural, deep, and alarming. More alarming, however, they were coming from all directions. Whatever was here wasn't alone. In all my years of hiking, I've never heard any animal make that sound. What the hell are they? I grabbed the machete I brought along and braced myself for any type of attack. The footsteps started up again, this time in all directions, like the grunting, which had also now intensified. I could see the shadows of a few of them because of the campfire. They were hairy, gigantic, and walking on 2 feet. Jesus fucking Christ. Were these what I think they are? We knew we couldn't just run for it. They were close and far at the same time. We were trapped. Surrounded. It was so intense that it was disorienting. And then, crickets. Everything stopped. And when I say everything, I mean whatever these things were, they all stopped at the same time. No more footsteps, no more grunting. I was gripping the machete handle so tight at this point that my fingernails cut into my palm. It was then that the tent shook briefly. Then nothing but uncomfortable silence. Wendy and I looked at each other. Did all that really just happen? I gathered all of my courage and once again reached out for the zipper. Just as I could feel the metal with my fingertips, what happened next felt nothing short of an earthquake. I was suddenly thrust against Wendy at the back of the tent, the back of my head breaking her nose, the machete slicing the tent, barely missing her arm. The rest of our items now losing the war to gravity. We were upside down, the tent being violently dragged in an unknown direction, our bodies like rag dolls, slamming into the ground below every time we hit a bump. Thud after thunderous thud of whatever this was, marching forward with us being dragged behind it. The speed increased, and then, like slamming on the brakes, once again, it all unexpectedly came to a halt. We remained perfectly still, waiting for it to start up again. We held each other, just shaking for what felt like days. I looked into her still watering eyes, then down to her nose. The once streaming blood was now dry, dark, and cracking. It was almost like the visual representation of what this trip became. I wanted nothing more in the world than for her to feel safe and happy again. I assured her that we would get out of this. I peeked out the hole made by the machete nearby. The blue hue of the trees now gave way to a golden kiss. From behind the mountains, the relief of the sun shined upon us. We made it. Weary, bruised, and bloody, we cautiously exited the tent. From where we were, there was no trace of our campsite in any direction. The area was a mess. There were large tree branches broken in half, some that were still dangling. The thing is, these branches were about 15 feet high, so whatever these were had to have been at least 9 to 10 feet tall. However, what really frightened me the most were the multiple deep foot-shaped imprints in the ground that circled the tent. These imprints were easily 20 inches long and 8 inches wide. We packed up and got out of there as fast as we could. We made it to the clearing, but as soon as we reached the main path, there was a single, deep grunt just beyond the trees. This was a warning. Never, ever to come back. Have you had a true paranormal experience? Submit your stories to eeriefiles. Submit@gmail.com. Maybe next time, the story will be yours. Like and subscribe, and follow us for more.